together again during certainly a hectic time with various demanding issues on your schedule. So this time together is very important, and I hopefully helpful for the coordination work that we do to develop strategies to address challenges that frequently cut across the various points that we occupy in the criminal justice system through improved communication and use of data and development of new approaches. We can achieve better outcomes for the criminal justice system, for public safety, so resources, and other key measures and metrics. So today's presentation, I think, will be really cross-cutting in nature, because it will involve an update from the Criminal Justice Information System team regarding the rollout of the search function, as well as the electronic workflow function within the information technology projects. The search function and called the Connecticut Information Sharing System is meant for registered users to be able to search across over a dozen kind of case management systems, enabling a breaking down of silos, barriers to data that credentialed users can use for corrections, for law enforcement, for parole, board decision making, for parole supervision, and as we'll learn, so many other functions. I think the highlight of our presentation today, not to take it all away from the CJPAC team, will be the chance to hear from actual users and how this information is being provided. And my hope is that everyone will participate, whether they wish to describe ways that they currently are or intend to use this technology, challenges they identify that perhaps could be addressed with this technology, and questions they have about its use and application. We've reached, with the search function, such a watershed moment where the technology is complete and it's ready to be rolled out to the field for anyone to use who works in the criminal justice system and has received the credentials and the training to utilize it. And the other piece that you'll be hearing about is the electronic workflow function, which is the ability to move from paper to electronic documents, to graduate from a process in which members of police departments have to transport case records by vehicle to courthouses for processing. And now there will be the ability of electronic workflow, transfer of electronic documents to enable the justice system to move more efficiently for the benefit of justice and fairness, for safety, to serve both victims, defendants, and others that are impacted by the criminal justice system. So before we get to that presentation, we will receive an update on the monthly indicators reports. Will be the research unit here at OPM Criminal Justice will give an update on some of the latest indicators. And for those who received a copy of the report, I'm sure you'll have you'll be eager to hear from Kyle about what are some of the changes that occurred. I think what drew my eye and what I'm eager to ask him about is some of the front end system trends that he's observed in the data regarding increases in arrests month over month, increases in bookings into DOC pretrial, perhaps an examination of some of the arraignments and other court-related data. So it should be a good, important way for us to observe some of the changes that are occurring in the criminal justice system month over month. And I am going in reverse order, so forgive me for people who are wondering, what is this person seeing things backwards today? I'm kind of reading from the end of the book back to the beginning, but before the monthly indicators, we'll do the agenda and the minutes from the March meeting. And just prior to that, we'll do some introductions. We have some new members of a new member of our commission who has joined us today. To add suspense, I won't mention the new member until we get to that point. Keep people on the edges of their seats. But you'll be well rewarded. We have an exciting new member of our commission for you to all meet. and then a member of the OPM staff I'm eager to introduce you to, who will be participating in today's meeting and future ones. So we'll get to those intros in just a moment. I thought, just because, again, we're still on the virtual platform, I'll go through the people who I see in the room and invite them to say a quick hello if they wish. Good chance to test out their video and audio, and then we'll launch into the meeting. So truly in no order, just the appearance on my list here, I'll just say I see from the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Brian Foley, glad you're here. Good morning to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you.
And next to Mr. Foley, I see Humayun Beg, who I've been speaking quite a lot about already. Humayun, thank you so much to you and to Sean and to Sarah and to Chris and other members of your team. This is great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I look forward to presenting our presentation. Thank you.
It's going to be great. Thank you so much for making the time. It's a great presentation. I see Beth Hamilton. I'm so happy you're here. I heard you on the radio recently. I have not listened to the audio yet. I missed it when it was on, but I'm very eager to hear some further insights from you regarding this month. It's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It'll be great to learn more and from you on the topic. Thanks for all your hard work this month on a very important month for survivors and for recognizing the impact of sexual violence.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm so happy to be here. I'm always happy to see you.
Great. Good morning to you. From the Department of Correction, Deputy Commissioner Carlos, thank you for the notice. I understand Commissioner Quiros is running just a couple of minutes, but we're grateful he'll be with us, and want to say hello to you. And I see many of your esteemed colleagues from the Department of Correction, and we'll look forward to welcoming the Commissioner when he's able to join. I know he's had some unexpected commitments this morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you.
And then Judge Carroll, I'm so happy you're here, sir. I know that given your extensive and co-chairmanship of the criminal CJPAC governing board, we will be eager to hear a bit from you regarding the rollout of the technology. And I know you're also eager to hear from Humayun and the team. So many thanks to you, sir, for your being here today, as well as members of the judicial branch.
Good morning, Mark. I should just note that Gary Roberge has another commitment this morning, and Mike Hines from CSSD is filling in for him this morning.
Well, very good. I certainly will miss Gary, Director Roberge, but I am as a major fan of Mr. Hines. I thank you so much, Judge, and Mr. Hines, for making the time to be here today.
Thanks, Mark.
Good morning. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, sir. Glad you're here. I know we'll be going through some of the pretrial data in the monthly, and always are eager to hear from CSSD under the judicial branch and pretrial services. So to the extent you have some insights, please throw your hand up or unmute yourself, and we'd love to learn a bit from you about what we should look for in that data. Again, the order shows, I think, the harmony within this organization. We have both, we'll begin with the Chief Public Defender, Chris Rapillo, and then Chief State's Attorney, Rich Colangelo. If you wouldn't mind, ma'am and sir, saying a quick hello. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark. I'm leaving my video off today. I'm recovering from my second dose of the shot, but I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here, man. Thank you for joining despite the side effects. I hope you have the ease quickly and the euphoria of a post-vaccine reality kicks in for you. Take good care, ma'am. Glad you're here.
Euphoria would be good.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. And I see from Department of State Department of Education, John Frassinelli, sir. Glad you're here. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all.
It was a pleasure to get to see the commissioner of your agency in the American Recovery Plan Act announcement. I will always remember her as a esteemed member of our commission, but I'm just so thrilled she's serving our state in that current capacity. She's doing fabulously in that role.
I'll certainly pass that on. Thanks.
Great. Great. And we are so lucky to be joined by Chairman Giles and members of the board and staff from the Board of Partisan Paroles. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say good morning to you and thank you for members of your agency who are here.
Indeed. Good morning to all. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Good. Lori Deneen, Ms. Deneen, I'm so glad you're here. Always our strong and esteemed public member. Grateful for your participation today.
Thank you. I hope the audio is working. I know if either audio or video are working, so I'm trying to fix that. So good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Technology is always finicky, especially at 9 a.m. meetings. So you did a great job, Ms. Dean. I can't see you, but I can hear you loud and clear. So the mic is working just fine.
Okay, 50%. We're getting there.
Sometimes I get 25 and I have to be happy with that. But yeah, you're well on your way. It's a great job. Glad you're here. Terrific. Trying to see. Ms. Siegel, Jane Siegel from Department of Veterans Affairs. So happy you're here, man. Thank you for representing your agency and for your participation in the meeting. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Good morning. Glad to be here.
And I did receive an email. Some of the tricky things is I got an email right before it started from Ms. Wiles from the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I'm thinking it said I'm running late because something came up suddenly. But if I'm missing her and she is here, I want to give her a chance to say hello in case I'm missing her or anyone from the coalition. Very good. I think I surmised correctly. Dr. Norco, I did see you join. I believe you're here from DEMIS. I'm not sure there are others here, but Dr. Norco, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone.
Great. So I'll turn next to Chief Kenney, and thank you, sir, for a chance to chat with you a bit during the introduction. It's always an opportunity for me to learn about kind of law enforcement and the various challenges and issues that are being addressed in our local communities. And one thing we talked about was an update on the clock counting down the days toward your well-deserved retirement. And I mentioned some excitement regarding a new member of our commission, and I need to emphasize that I guess gratitude and anticipation of working with a new member is certainly offset by news of your imminent retirement. But I did want to give you a chance, sir, if you wish, just to introduce the chief who will be joining our commission, and then I'd like to welcome him as well, if that's okay with you, sir.
That's perfectly fine with me, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that you said imminent retirement, not imminent demise. Good morning, everyone. As you know, I've been a longstanding member of the CJPAC. I've been an original appointment in 2008, and I am, as the commissioner knows, he said in my meeting, the last meeting, that I'd be retiring, and caused me all kinds of phone calls from the media regarding that. I appreciate that, Mark. Thank you very much. But it was my honor to submit to the CPCA to find a replacement. And Chief Stewart, the president of the CPCA, has appointed Chief Brett Mahoney from the Waterford Police Department to stand in my seat, so to speak. Hopefully he'll be able to replace me and take over from where I've left. I've known Chief Mahoney for many years, and I think he's going to be a great addition to the CJPAC and provide perspective from the CPCA. So without further ado, if Chief Mahoney is on, I would like him to click on his video so he could join the meeting and then take over for me and then the June meeting. Chief?
Very good, thank you. Brett Mahoney from, as Chief Kenney said, Waterford Police Department. Thank you, Chief Kenney, for all you've done for law enforcement in Connecticut, not only with this group, but with CPCA as well. Just a quick rundown for me. I've been at the Waterford Police Department for 26 years, 2 years prior with the East Hampton Police Department, and then seasonally with the Department of Environmental Protection for 6 years prior to that. So suddenly I'm old, and here I am. I've been the chief for 6 years in Waterford. We do what we can to be as progressive as possible, and I look forward to working with every one of you. Any questions? My phone is always on, and I certainly hope to follow in the esteemed footsteps, not the demise of.
Thank you, Chief. I think I didn't realize I might have a side job. I can moonlight as a press aide or a communications person for the chief. I didn't. I might have an additional role I could explore if things don't work out. Maybe don't quit your day job. Chief Mahoney, thank you so much. Your reputation precedes you. I've had a tremendous pleasure getting to know Chief Stewart in his term as president of the Chiefs Association. And so I knew even before he had named you, we would be fortunate with a very progressive and strong representative of local law enforcement. And then when I got a chance to speak with my colleague who's working with you on various initiatives involving body and dash cameras, burn jag, and many other initiatives, I began learning a bit more about your work. It was I grew with it with a heightened anticipation of the work we could do together. So thank you for giving us your time and for serving. As I mentioned before, I look forward to sitting down with you, I guess virtually still, but whatever would work, and just ask for your advice on topics that we ought to cover in future commission meetings. I look to try to be as interdisciplinary and cross-cutting as possible with the topics, and we'll benefit from your presence on the commission. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. One other introduction I'd like to make is a new member of the OPM criminal justice team. He joined our organization just under a month ago, and his name is Maurice Reeves, and I'm really excited for you to meet him. I expect that he'll be joining virtually all of our commission meetings and teaming up with me on efforts to prepare for the meetings, to facilitate these discussions, to do follow-up items, and that will be he already is a godsend on the other topics, and in terms of our ability to work together, and the added capacity we'll have here in CJPAC will be very helpful. His title is staff attorney, and but he'll be involved in all the cross-cutting work within our criminal justice division here at the Office of Policy Management. We're a lean team, and like many of you, like all of you all, for your work that you do, you wear many hats, and you have to be able to work on a whole host of issues. So we model ourselves after the work that you all do in this area. And so he'll be touching all areas of our work and bringing value and impact to everything. And a point I'd like to ask him to maybe elaborate a bit on is he's actually a former practitioner in the criminal justice system. And as someone like me who does not have that background, I have been leaning on him, as I do on Kyle, who's has experience in law enforcement on our team, to help me to dig a little deeper, to a layer closer to the issues we are examining through policy, through data, through grants, through these convenings. So Maurice, I know it's always awkward to sort of come into a virtual environment to say hello, but I did want to ask you, when you introduce yourself, just to explain a bit about your professional background. And I think it might be interesting to the group about ways that we can apply that to our work in CJPAC and beyond.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for those kind words and the warm welcome. I will say you've made the transition as easy as possible. I've been here at OPM now for almost a month. Prior to this, I worked at DCJ at the New Britain State's Attorney's Office as a prosecutor. I did that for almost 3 years. I know Mark indicated that both Kyle and I have had law enforcement experience, but I do want to say that Mark exhibits a great grasp of these issues in the short time I've been able to work with him. So very excited to join this team, to work with you all in this on this commission and on future endeavors. So thank you for welcoming me, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Something I really liked that Maurice shared with me about his background is he handled juvenile and adult cases, which is something that State's Attorney from New Britain has put an emphasis on. with kind of cross training. So that has been a real value add to our team, which works both on juvenile and adult issues, juvenile adult cases. So we're excited to have him on board, and he'll be helping later on in the presentation. It'll be great to do this work together. Well, great. Well, I was about to turn to the minutes, but just wondering, anyone or anything I neglected in the intro, or is there anything that anyone might like to share, just as we handle the sort of miscellaneous kickoff issues to our proceedings today?
Mr. Chairman, it's Carlton Giles. I forgot to mention, I'm just getting my first cup of coffee, but I'm joined by Rich Paracco, the Executive Director, Lee and Vil Demaris, and Floody from the board as research analysts. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, we are very lucky to have not just the principal members of the commission participate, but I'm always so thrilled to see the staff, the crucial staff and leadership of key divisions and units within agencies who join. So for those who wonder if I'm intentionally committing oversights, I am trying to recognize the agencies, and I try to be sort of inclusive when I welcome everybody to know that you're here. So Vil and Lee and Rich, you all were phenomenal at last month's CJPAC meeting to talk about the parole violation project. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope the coffee helps you. I'm on my second cup and hoping for brighter things. The brain is still trying to catch up. Judge Carroll, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I just wanted to take a brief moment here to express my personal gratitude and the gratitude of the judges and employees of the judicial branch to Chief Kenney for his long and dedicated career in law enforcement, and particularly for his very cooperative and collaborative service on CJPAC. His experience and insight was always thoughtful and careful, and was certainly always appreciated. And Chief, you will be missed. So congratulations and good luck.
It's very kind, sir. Thank you very much for that. You always have stirring words to convey gratitude and meaning, Judge, and those words are certainly much appreciated by the chief. I know that for sure. Thank you.
And the chief is very lucky, because it looks like he was conducting another conversation as I was talking.
I will. I'll definitely
brief the transcript of that, and I'll send it to him, please.
Thank you. That's, it's funny. Chief Mahoney said it too. The phone's always open and the phone's always ringing. I think we all know and appreciate the role of a police chief, that you can pause other things to hold a meeting. So I wish I had the multitasking ability of someone of that position. It's extraordinary, the service. Well, very good. Well, I had submitted the minutes to the group, and I wondered if there were any questions or concerns from any members about the draft minutes that were distributed. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask for a second?
Second, Judge Carroll.
Thank you, Judge Carroll. I appreciate it, sir. Very good. Well, I'm about to transition to the monthly indicators report, and when Kyle joins, I'll just ask him if he'd like me to bring up the indicators report on my screen, or if he'd like to. But I do want to note that we will not be having a May CJPAC meeting. I had heard concerns from members regarding commitments and prior obligation scheduling that last Thursday in May, and with the point we are in the session, and with the other demands, I felt that the best course of action was not to kind of force a different date on people's calendars, but instead to hold for June, when I would like to actually perhaps reserve more time for discussion and updates as opposed to presentation, knowing that coming out of the end of the session, there will probably be a benefit for an update and for discussion. So our next meeting will be Thursday, June 24th at 9 a.m. Certainly can follow up on any items in the interim, but we'll reconvene at that date as a group. And Kyle, you tacitly answered my question, that you were able to put the monthly indicators report on the screen. Thank you, sir, doing that, and I'll turn it over to you if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I jumped ahead. I hope you don't mind. This way I can control the screen as well and highlight the different metrics I want to point out as we walk through the document a little bit this morning. But in the interest of doing something a little bit differently, I usually just rip the Band-Aid off and jump straight into talking about different things in the report. I just wanted to express some gratitude and thanks for all the people who contribute to this report every month. I think I hope I don't represent that this is something that I pull together by myself and it's a big lift every month, but we get data from every stakeholder across the criminal justice system in Connecticut. I think it's important to express my gratitude for that, from the Department of Correction, who submits a large trove volume of data every month, the 1st and the 5th and the 7th. The CSSD, which provides us a great deal of information as well around arraignments and split sentence starts and the probation population, and as well as CJPAC, which provides us with criminal arrest information that we upload into this report every month as well. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the data folks from around the system who send us data every month, and I also want to thank my team who really transitioned into pulling this report together every month. Patrick Laka and Kevin Neary, who my little research shop, and they do the Herculean task of really pulling this together, and I just get the benefit of reviewing the data and adding a little bit of my own flavor to the analysis. So just wanted to throw that out there today before I jumped in. But Mark, you sort of foreshadow that we're interested in some of the front end metrics and tracking some of the different data points that are consistently reported in this document. I think we typically anchor and ground our discussion in the prison population because of our requirement to do a forecast every year, and it's sort of what we look at, what is impacted is sort of the dependent variable in all of this analysis. And so I'll start by talking about our forecast discussion on page 1 and where we are in reference to our forecast that was published in February of this year. And luckily, early on, our cone of uncertainty is usually pretty narrow, 2 months in, and we're tracking pretty closely this year to our forecast that we issued in February. We're only off by about 68 inmates, 1st of April, to what we forecasted for the prison population. But that's sort of misleading a bit for what we're anticipating and what we're looking at as might be coming down the pipe with this system as COVID sort of drifts into our review mirror, hopefully in the coming months, and maybe over a year, might take a while. But what we're looking at are all those independent variables, all those other metrics that sort of drive this prison population, especially on the front end. And what we saw in the month of March was a significant uptick in a lot of the process metrics that we look at, such as statewide arrests, lockup arraignments, admissions to the DOC, both pretrial and sentenced, and then some of the back-end processes as well, discretionary releases, end of sentence discharges, the CRU case reviews, probation case starts. All of these things really ticked up significantly, and I don't mean that in a statistical sense, but in sort of a volumetric sense in March relative to what we saw in February. That's not wholly unusual for what we normally see. There's usually a very seasonal component to the metrics that we track, and also the fact that March has more business days than February we tend to see a bit more business happening during that month. It's the magnitude that was a bit surprising this year versus years past. We normally see somewhere between a 6, 8, 10% increase February to March in a number of those metrics. But this year we saw in some cases upwards of 30, 40% increases from the February to March figures, which we're sort of seeing as very early and yet to be confirmed signs of a return to somewhat a new normal in the criminal justice system, an uptick in some of these metrics. And the big front end, the very front of the system that we track is the arrest data every month, and we report that in chart 5 down on the bottom of page 4 because it's so important. We put it all the way at the end, at the very bottom where no one ever goes. And what we do is we plot last year's monthly arrest totals in a line chart with blue squares over the top usually of the current year's arrest figures month over month in a bar, a lighter blue bar. And normally what we see is a fairly reliable pattern where last year's line chart hovers just slightly over this year's arrest totals in the bars. This year, we're seeing something completely different because we had a massive disruptive event last year in March and April with the impact of COVID. But we're seeing that this March, we can see February to March of this year, a fairly sizable increase in that arrest metric, but then also an increase over last year's arrest numbers in March. And so that's kind of what we're keeping an eye on as our primary front-end indicator. But if you think about process, how many of those arrests end up as arraignments from lockup, and ultimately how many end up as admissions to the Department of Correction, we've sort of examined that relationship a little bit in this indicator's report, but it's something we'd like to unpack a little bit more as we work with our partners at CSSD. And it's something we've had preliminary discussions about, and we hope to pick up that conversation, pick up that thread in the next couple of months to return to that, and maybe add some additional layers of analysis into our report to point out where the process between arrest and then lockup arraignment and then ultimately admission into the Department of Correction as a pretrial detainee happens. And that's represented on our chart 2, our big gigantic spaghetti monster report chart. And that's where we get to see this relationship between monthly criminal arrests, arraignments from lockup, and then these admissions to the pretrial population. And what we saw last month was that we had a bit of an uptick in these monthly criminal arrests, but the arraignment increase was a larger in sort of percentage terms than the monthly criminal arrests. And that can suggest a lot of things, but to me it suggested more of these arrests were either more serious or had higher bonds or had conditions that the defendant couldn't meet to bond out prior to this lockup arraignment. And that's a bit of an unknown in our current data collection, and something we look forward to learning more about. And so, sort of in summation, what we're doing right now is very closely monitoring and watching a lot of these metrics. And as we'll look month over month, and if we see a continuing trend of increases in volume, that might be the harbinger of that ever so slight uptick in our prison population. Ultimately is what we're looking for to match our forecast that we made back in February of this year. I think that's about all I was hoping to cover this month, Mark. If there's anything more you are interested in as you read the report, I'm happy to point out any of those things, or if anyone has any comments or additions to make to the very high level analysis I just did of the monthly indicators report, I'm all ears.
Thanks, Kyle. It looks like Mr. Hines has a thought. I turn to the gentleman for his questions or thoughts.
Yeah, Kyle, I think you made some very good points about the pretrial numbers. I think the seasonal component is certainly a big factor. Returning to normal as well. We have seen an uptick during the night in the number of arrests. We're not where we were, but you know, the population that we're seeing in lockup right now is a much more serious population. And I think that, you know, with some of the works we're trying to do with Brian Sperry and your shop, maybe we should start taking a look at some of those people that we saw and where they kind of scored out on that case data record, because that would give us, you know, a pretty good indication of what is left in lockup. You know, one of the things that I think is interesting, and the reason I think you're accurate about that, is if you look at your jail re-interview numbers, just from how many people we were able to get out in March as opposed to February, those numbers increased almost 100. I think it was 138 or something in February, up, and 225 in March. So, you know, we're still actively out there working with Department of Corrections to try to get some of these folks out. But I would agree with some of your analysis, and I think Brian is on this call. Brian Sperry is on the call, but I think we could take a look at what is left in lockup based on the, their risk level, and that'll give us a pretty good indication. Last thing I'd like to say, Mark, to you is, the other day I got an email from Kyle at 4:30 in the morning, and this kid just does not stop working. So I wanted to give him a shout out. I did respond to him because I knew he was up because the baby was up, but I was happy he responded quickly.
Oh my gosh. I think that that does not reflect well on me if the esteemed research director is working 4:30 a.m.
It was Mike hit the nail on the head. It wasn't that I was really focused on work. Isabel was up, and it was my night to get up and take care of her. So I was trying to do a little bit of double duty while my brain was active for a short moment.
I think she's going to, as a future in math, as a statistician, a mathematician, or quant, she's going to absorb through osmosis all this work. This is great. I guess I was wondering, to Kyle, and if Mike would care to weigh in, I was really intrigued by chart 2A, Kyle, and the way that our pretrial system, has these stages of review of people who enter the criminal justice system from lockup to bail commissioner to judge to pretrial services within CSSD to JRI to treatment pathways program. There are all these kind of rungs that people move through as they progress inward. And at every one of those steps, they undergo a review based on actuarial risk and need and other factors to sort them into appropriate categories, to provide them with incarceration where needed, with treatment and services, community supervision, et cetera. With Mike sharing that the population is coming in with additional needs or risk factors, I wonder if there is if it's brought to our attention just different types of interventions that are needed to address this population. Is it are we encountering different factors that would benefit from interventions to reduce recidivism and to prioritize incarceration? If most of these individual defendants have been in the system before, does that yield perhaps deeper insight into how we can further strengthen the pretrial or front end of our criminal justice system?
Yeah, Mark, I'll jump in quickly. We still have a variety of alternative conditional releases that we can recommend to the court, and we've been very fortunate that the court has gone along with a lot of these releases. So if we're sending someone for a mental health evaluation, we still have our providers out there doing virtual and in-person interventions. And the courts are, certainly going along with some of those releases, but that pool that used to be much larger of those individuals isn't as great, and what the court is left with a lot of times are some very serious charges. And that's just the population we're seeing. But to Kyle's point, I think we are moving back to another normal, or to our old normal, and I think that you will see, as you're seeing with jail re-interview, you're going to start seeing an increase in more and more releases, as we get through this pandemic.
Yep. Very helpful, Mike. I think that's the benefit of a risk and need informed system, is that you retain the individual discretion of these points in the system, but their discretionary decision making is informed by this risk and need assessment. So you're doing a constant re-examination of the population and its needs. And if it's a smaller population, that stands to reason it will have heightened risks and needs and more complicating factors. And we benefit, I think, as a state by being unified in this capacity and having this ability to work closely across the decision makers at this front end, at this end of the system. Looking forward to delving into it more. Certainly, we're still trying to bring this into focus on these issues that Kyle has highlighted. Are there other questions or reactions or thoughts that people are considering? Dr. Norco, I know you're continuing to search out options regarding people with mental health needs come into contact with the court system, and highlighting perhaps different judicial districts and highlighting that area. Just didn't know if anything sprang to your mind or to others when you look at this data.
Yeah, well, we are making some progress in identifying a likely target for starting the pilot. One of the things that we learned from the data that Judicial gathered for us, that Judge Gold forwarded to us, was that 43% of the defendants in 2019, calendar year 2019, who were referred for competency evaluations had only misdemeanor charges. So it seems like we could probably do better than that, and that's a population that we hope to target and to try to divert out of the criminal justice system and into a treatment system. Since as we reviewed the report from the Council of State Governments back in January, these are not people that the state has any serious interest in prosecuting. They just want these people to be well and to not be disruptive in the community. And if we can do that through a treatment intervention, that's what we're hoping to do. So we've started to have some discussions with a particular location. We have to talk to private nonprofit provider in the area yet, but I think we're getting closer to identifying that, and hopefully we'll see some further diminution of the people staying in the system who could be better served in other ways.
Very helpful, sir. That's really helpful with the 75% of admissions having been there before, which is not an uncommon statistic to see. There are the people who have multiple touches, and the difficulty with the point of the system that they're reaching is it can be a challenge to connect them to the long-term services. So people with low-level charges, but pretty extensive records of contact and substantial needs. It seems that the work you're doing is much needed, and I'm excited for the CJPAC to continue to review your efforts and to assist with them as this moves along.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it as well.
Any other thoughts from any final thoughts from commission members or anyone on the call about the data? Okay, great. Well, Kyle, thank you very much. And I know that Isabel was transitioning from nocturnal to hopefully daylight, making things easier on the parents. I'm not sure how far along, if the 4:30 was an anomaly or if you're still having a nocturnal baby, but you certainly are just quite a dad, that's for sure, from everything I'm hearing and observing about the loving care you're giving to your daughter. So
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity to walk through this document with this commission and share a little bit of my personal life with Isabel, as we call her Shoo Shoo back home. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, sir. Well, great. Well, we are lucky to have a gathering of speakers that Humayun Beg, who's the executive director of the Criminal Justice Information System, has brought together. OPM has the pleasure of co-chairing with Judge Carroll, the CJS governing board. And although I don't serve in that capacity, I do coordinate with our Deputy Secretary, Costa Diamantis, and it is a project with significant investment and support and value in our state. So I think that I'm thinking, assuming Humayun, that you'll be taking over control of the PowerPoint. I'm not sure if you know how to do that through Teams. I guess it's requested.
Yes, Tammy, if you don't mind bringing up the presentation, thank you.
Tammy, I'm glad you're here. Another solid member of the CJS team. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
And we do have a fail-safe file. Oh, good. There we go. Terrific.
And you can move to the next slide. Thank you. Before I start, I'd like to invite Judge Carroll to say a few words, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Sure, Humayun. You invited me and Mark invited me to make some brief opening comments, although Mark did a pretty good job at the beginning of the meeting talking about CJIS and its history. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of Connecticut's criminal justice information system, you can go to ct.gov and you'll be directed there to CJIS's homepage, and that provides a great deal of background information about the project. In short, for years, individual agencies within the criminal justice system maintained their own data systems to track, maintain, and distribute important criminal justice information. Similarly, for years, there was a recognition that maintaining this important information in separate silos in multiple agencies was inefficient and outdated. So the vision for an integrated system developed over the years and has been addressed through the enactment of statutes that created the CJIS system and the CJIS governing board to oversee the development and implementation of an integrated criminal justice information system. And indeed, many of the members of CJPAC serve on the governing board created by the CJIS statute. Among other things, the governing statute provides that the governing board is charged to design and implement a comprehensive statewide information technology system to facilitate the immediate, seamless, and comprehensive sharing of information between all state agencies, departments, boards, and commissions, having any cognizance over matters relating to law enforcement and criminal justice, and organized local police departments and law enforcement officials. The statute also requires that the information technology system shall include, without limitation, a central tracking and information database, a central electronic document repository, and centralized analytical tools, all of which shall be developed with state-of-the-art technology. That's the statutory charge, and that, in a nutshell, is what CJIS is all about. Now, the governing board was also charged with the responsibility of conducting a comprehensive nationwide search to secure a talented and skillful executive director to manage the development and deployment of the system. And that individual is Humayun Beg, and I'm happy to turn the presentation over to you now, Humayun.
Thank you, Judge. And we are very lucky to have you and Mark Palka being part of the board, and you being your able co-chairmanship to guide us through what we are doing. So in the presentation, I'll go over some of the background, a lot of it you've already covered, and we'll go over the strategy and goals. And I'm joined by some of our very able members. Tammy Harris, who's controlling the presentation, and we have Cesara Johnson, who's going to talk about search, and then we have Chris Lovell, who's going to give us a good update on workflow and the digital workflows, and last but not least, we'll have Sean Butcher, who'll talk about analytics. And you heard Kyle. Analytics is a natural outflow of some of this. Where we've collected all this data, and we have able data scientists in our state who can use that data. So we'll hear about some of that. Could you move to the next slide, please, Tammy? So as Judge Carroll pointed out, CJIS was charged with building electronic system which connects all the different CJIS criminal justice agencies. And it came about due to some legislature seeing some gaps and opportunities in data sharing between different agencies, which could improve public safety significantly and also bring cost saving. And just as the slide mentions, there was a study done in 2008. And I'm sure those numbers, if we were to revise today, would be significantly more. But we are looking at saving at least $15.5 million a year by moving to an digital workflow where uniform arrest report packages are delivered electronically versus right now where they're driven back and forth from the police departments to judicial offices and Division of Criminal Justice and so on, and it goes back and comes back. So all that is going to be digitally transported. Uh, with that, we collect a lot of data, so that we connect 14 different agencies, which which gives us a very rich database, which can provide information for different agencies where they can use it for, like, police department for investigative purposes, for Department of Correction, for Board of Pardon and Parole, prosecutors, public defenders, other agencies that are part of the governing board. Next slide, please. So there are three main components, as I've been talking about. There is a search, and in search we'll have so Zara Johnson go over how 14 different criminal records are collected and how those systems are interconnected for doing search. So you can do search by people, location, events, and property, and link them all together. So if you search for a person, it shows different addresses that person may be linked to, and then you can click on the address and bring about other people who are connected to that address, and thus make a different connection about where those people are moving around or who they're associating with. And this also applies to other things, like a person who may have been associated with a particular event, who else was associated with that event, and same thing with the property. So Sarah Johnson will walk us through how that is used, and Chief Kenney may have some remarks to make, and I'll call on him a little later. On workflow, electronic workflow, as I mentioned, arrest paperwork being sent electronically from the courts and to different agencies, and the dispositions and any adjudication that happens on that the arrest paperwork, both from the judicial system as well as the prosecutor and public defender's office. That also is all collected and goes back and forth electronically to the police departments, to the prosecutors, to the judge, to the judicial department, to judicial clerks, and etc. So we'll have Chris Lovell give us a good update as to where we are, and we've had a lot of successes in that. And we'll call upon Chief State Attorney Rich Colangelo to make some observation. Also from judicial, we'll have Ralph D'Agostino, and we have some updates on how we are dealing with the record management systems that police departments are using. So we'll give you a good update on workflow. On analytics, Sean Butcher from CJS will present how we are pulling together all the data and how it's being provided for analytics. And it's a natural outcome of this rich data collection. We also have Ken Barone from Institute of Municipal and Regional Policy at CCSU, who'll talk about how he's using CJS systems to collect and analyze data for police use of force information. So we have a good presentation there as well. Next slide, please. So I won't spend too much time over here. Just the key point is, we have 14 criminal record sources that we use to fill our database and to transport data between these agencies. And as you can see, the CJS governing board members and community partners are most all of them are members of this committee as well. So a lot of this information is shared with them on a regular basis. So this is a key point as how we are connecting different criminal justice systems. So let's move on to the next slide. The next slide gives you, current as of March 2021 data of how much data is being used. So on the left side, you see number of searches performed. In the middle, it's the workflow submissions. So that you don't see much because that's just being put into place, and the total number of users that we have right now, and that's out of a possible 12,000 users that it'll get up to. What I'll point out is, how CPCA and DOC are the two main users currently. CPCA obviously being the police departments, and DOC being they use it for classification and placement of inmates. Also, they use it for security to risk assessment on visitors, and just to make sure any criminal associations are not introduced. CPCA obviously uses for case intake, and they use it for investigative purposes, for dispatch, and a lot of different uses. And the search portal is being currently right now. Chief Kenney, if you have a few minutes, if you could offer some observations before we get into the details of search.
Yes, thank you much. Back in the day when I was a detective, probably it seems like 100 years ago, I would sit down at a computer terminal and have to conduct an investigation and literally check all these different databases. If you missed one, you missed some valuable information. This tool now can be pushed out to the officer on the street, and through a name check, the officer is going to be getting a plethora of information that is going to be so valuable in dealing with citizen contacts in the street. We will have automatic checks of the firearms records from the DESIP, prawn warrants, which don't show up as file 5s in the old systems. So the safety factor for officers dealing on the street and getting this information is a tremendous asset for them, for the user. As you can see, the CPCA total users it's not that high a number. Right now, in my department, it's limited to dispatchers, our record staff, and our detectives, mainly because we weren't able to hold the training sessions that we felt were necessary for our users our officers to do that. But since COVID restrictions are coming down, we're planning on having all of our officers trained to utilize this system. This is a far better system that was in place back in when I sat on the Sentencing and Parole Task Force back in 2008 when we were examining the incident of the Cheshire tragedy and why information wasn't passed along. And we were dealing with completely disparate systems. And we came up with a recommendation that we should be all tied together. And Chairman Begg's group has a tremendous task just putting all this together because of all the different systems in the state. The police don't even use the same records management system. We use the same system as DESIP, but many others do different things. So just to have a central clearinghouse, as my lieutenant said, it's the Google for law enforcement. You put a name in and all of this information is at your hands is such a great tool for our investigators, but also for the officers on the street. It's definitely going to improve officer safety in dealing with citizen contacts. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Kenney. Really appreciate your comments. Next slide, please. At this point, I'd like to introduce Cesara Johnson. She's joined us as a program manager, and she's helped us increase the number of units being trained, the deployment and search and all that tremendously, and she's been a great asset to us. And Cesara, why don't you give us an update on the progress on search?
Absolutely. So again, my name is Cesara Johnson. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Before I begin, I do want to say hello and thank you for the warm welcome by the Undersecretary, Attorney Reeves, Chief Kenney, Chief Mahoney, Judge Carroll, and all the other criminal justice and law enforcement family and friends. Thank you so much for having me here. And we are so excited to report, at least I'm very excited to report, that in terms of the increases that we have, you've heard from Chief Kenney, and we see that there's been such an increase from our current partners. As you can see in the calendar year 2021, our Q1, as compared to 2020 Q1, we saw more than a 100% +% growth rate in our CIS searches. So we see 418, up to 418% increase by the police department searches, and up to 390% for the criminal justice agencies. So that's great news. And we can go to the next slide, please. Next, I want to talk about examples of our top power users of the Connecticut Information Sharing System. We have patrol. So as you heard before, that getting this CIS out to the vehicle, so those who are on patrol, getting it out there, because as Chief Kenney said, for the officers on the street, it helps them how they interact with citizens. It helps them with the safety factor for the officers. He also talked about no longer being siloed. It's more robust. So we're happy to report that the police departments are getting it out to the vehicles. Also, our investigation units are using it a lot, which is great. We see the dispatch using it. And also in terms of the police department command staff, we are currently galvanizing the chiefs of police to meet with us to establish requirements that they want to see in a command staff site portal in order for them to strategically be able to monitor what's happening with all of the police department staff and also with the agencies. We can go ahead to the next one. So as you heard about the Connecticut Information Sharing System, the impetus for it was really to decrease the amount of preventable mistakes in the community, to law enforcement personnel, and also within the criminal justice agencies. So I stress that this CIS search application, it is important and it is required that we get continual support and financial support and human support across the public community, across the law enforcement communities, and also with the criminal justice agencies. So we know that this is a system that is robust and we're working to make it even more robust. So again, we need your support constantly. So it's 14 criminal source records right now. That's source systems that catalogs information in 4 indices. And what that is we call it PLEP. PLEP. What is PLEP? By the end of this session, you will not forget PLEP. PLEP, people, location, events, and properties. PLEP. Now, all of that in a single portal, as Chief Kenney said, no longer siloed. It is together, and we're excited about that. So what does it do? So this CIS search, it will return results, not just the results that you are requesting, but also the associated records that go along with PLEP. People, location, events, and properties. Okay, we can go to the next one. So what is it? Chief Kenney talked about the law enforcement Google search. Yes, it is, but Google has nothing on us, right? So with the navigation and the search, what it is that it is a Google-like search with 2 search options, keyword search, and also a more advanced search as well. So what does it do as well? So also you'll notice on the bottom left, you'll see search purpose and search reason as well. We want to make sure that there's a checks and balance system to prevent any fraudulent activity to occur and also any avoidable risks. So users of CIS search have to put in a search purpose as well as a search reason. Again, checks and balances as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide. They also offer, so CIS search also offers a quick search function. So again, when it comes back with the results, it's not just the requested information that is typed in, but it's also the relationships and the history associated with PLEP, people, location, events, and property. Okay, so what you'll also see there is a quick jump menu that allows people to quickly access certain information. So again, if someone is on the road, if there's an officer on the road, again, time is of essence, so quickly be able to search for records. And also, as you can see in the green circle, to be able to have quick access to data sources such as DMV, DMV information, Department of Corrections, the Board of pardons and parole, weapons. So it's very, very robust right now. And again, quick searches as well. All right, we can go to the next one. So let's talk about results. SIS Search has powered results for PLEP. People, locations, events, properties. So what are we talking about with the P in PLEP? People. We see photos of people so that they are readily identifiable. We see personal details as well. Also, we have associated for the L in PLEP locations. You can see on the bottom, they're related locations, both vehicles and residences. We also have events. So what kind of associated alerts can an officer or other personnel see? Are there any sort of protective orders out there? What's happening with the Department of Corrections? What's out there as well? So again, firearms, property, etc. So again, robust search results as well. We can go to the next slide, please. We have wonderful, wonderful staff who are using, or partners who's using SIS Search. For example, we have Detective Andrew Jacobson from Hartford Police Department, who's been at the department for many, many years. And so with that wisdom, using SIS Search for cold cases, for example, amongst many other cases. And what we noticed that was awesome with Detective Jacobson is that there was a case that was over 25 years old at the time. Previously, they could not identify a witness, but when SIS came along, they were able to confirm the identity of a witness that had not been able, they were not able to confirm since 1996. That is powerful. So that's what do we like about that? We like because across the board, we're talking about SIS protecting the community as well as the law enforcement and criminal justice agencies. So that includes helping us develop leads, locate witnesses, eliminate suspects. That's powerful because in this day and age, this environment that we're in, we don't need any falsely accused or accidentally accused witnesses. So there's the power in search to eliminate suspects as well and direct resources in many different ways. Let's go to another use case. So next slide, please. We have another wonderful case. And again, these are just two of many cases that. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Was I just, okay. Okay, so now we have Guilford. So with Guilford PD, with the larceny case, for instance, they had limited information. From that limited information, they were able to use SIS Search to establish more information on PLEP. Again, persons, locations, events, and property. From there, they were able to find a suspect, eliminate that suspect, find another suspect, which was actually the correct suspect. They actually had a warrant obtained, and then the victim actually had full restitution in the Guilford Police Department case. So that was wonderful. So we are very happy. Again, I'm saying please continue to support us, continue to join the family movement, please. And I want to actually pass this to, I think, is it Chris who's going next? Chris, I believe.
Yeah, Chris, please.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Cesara, and I tell you that's going to be a tough act to follow. Yeah, a lot of great information there, and thank you for all of your hard work and bringing all these new users in. So, as many of you know, my name is Chris Lovell, and I was first the project manager for the search component, which Cesara just talked about, and now I moved over to the workflow component. Which is a very important component as far as is updating how criminal justice information is passed around to different state agencies. What's this workflows? Is it central hub to receive arrest packages and send those to the CJIS downstream agencies like Judicial, DCJ, BOPP, and agencies like that. So when we look at it as two different components. We talk about outbound messages and we talk about inbound messages. Now, outbound messages are case updates, which are sent once a day, disposition and schedule updates, which are sent throughout the day. As information is entered into the criminal system, those messages fire off to the downstream agencies. And to give you an example of that, a disposition, if something happens in court, the court clerk will make changes in the criminal system, which will fire off a message to the downstream agencies like a DCJ or a DESPI, who is receiving these information exchanges. So this is extremely important. So that's on the outbounds. On the inbounds, we're going to electronically send in arrest paperwork coming in from the RMSs. Now, each PD in the state of Connecticut has an RMS. We're currently working very closely with NextGen, which is the largest RMS vendor in the state. And I do believe they have about 60% of the PDs around the state. So what is going to happen is once a person is arrested, the officer is going to enter the data into their RMS system, and that information is going to be sent through SIS, where that data is going to be validated. Now, that's very important. We want to make sure that folks are charged correctly with the right statutes. So we have a statute table which compares what the officer is charging an individual with, and making sure that that statute's actually currently on the books. And that information is going to come into SIS. They're going to validate a couple of key fields. And then we are going to send that information to both DCJ and to Judicial, along with all the documents associated with that arrest. And what's going to happen next is Judicial is going to, the clerk is going to review that information in a new system that Judicial is currently building. They're going to validate that all the information is correct. And once that information is validated, they're going to automatically send it into their, they're going to manually send it, I should say. The clerk is going to validate it, is going to approve it, and then it's going to go into their criminal system. And then once that happens, the schedule update message is fired off, which is sent to DCJ as well as the arresting agency with the next court date. And it will also contain the docket number, which is going to be very critical for DCJ as well. So that kind of kicks off the whole criminal justice adjudication process, which is one of the big cost savings here is when the officer enters the data into their RMS, that is the only time that data is going to be entered in. So Judicial and DCJ are going to take that data in, so there's no longer going to be any typing by the court clerks. There's no more paper being driven into the courts. So once they validate that data, it goes straight into their systems, which is going to be a great time saver, and it's good, valid data, which is very important. So what also is very important is that we can't do this by ourselves. We have a lot of partners out there that are helping us to bring up these exchanges. Judicial has been extremely important. DCJ, another great partner. We talk to them every day. We're building these systems together, as well as BOPP. So one of the things that BOPP is looking for, not only to send in pardon information much more quickly, but also they would like to search arrest information from a PD that's been sent in arrest documents. And this, we believe, is going to speed up the pardon process, because rather than writing to the individual PD, they can actually go into the system. And once DCJ has validated the information and made it available to the downstream agencies, they're going to be able to view those documents, which is going to speed up the pardon process. We're very excited about that. So that's the next thing we're going to be working on as soon as we get the arrest paperwork flowing through the system and start our statewide deployment, which I'll talk about later. So Tammy, if you can give me the next slide, please. So like I said, we couldn't do this without our partners. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to bring some of our partners on the call and have them talk about what they're doing and how SIS is going to help them to make their process more robust. So the first person I'd like to talk to is Ralph D'Agostino. If you can talk about what's going on right now with Judicial.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I'm glad you were slotted right after Cesara. Definitely a tough act to follow. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Ralph D'Agostino. I'm the Deputy Director for Criminal Matters for Superior Court Operations. And although I'm going to give a brief overview of things that are happening within our unit. I can't express my gratitude for all the people that have been working on this, both within CIS and within judicial. You know, I know Diana Maurice is on today and Karen Sandler is. They both have worked very hard to make this happen. So very appreciative and happy to be the spokesperson. But there's been so many people who've worked on this. So I'm briefly going to discuss the electronic submission of arrest information by police departments. We are very close to receiving arrest information electronically from police departments. The project is starting in the Middletown Judicial District, and Clinton is the first police department going live. So what does that mean? What's going to happen is the police department is going to be submitting an arrest packet electronically. It's going to appear in a queue within our system, which is the CRIM system. Clerks are going to be able to review this information, and they'll either be able to process the information they receive or reject the paperwork they receive. So the police department's going to send over a packet. It's going to have a multitude of documents, things like bond paperwork, notice of rights, the uniform arrest report, a summons, and it's going to be electronically uploaded, the data, into our system. So what does that do? Well, it streamlines the process. Currently, practice is police departments come into court in the morning, and at all hours of the morning. They have to drive from the police department. Some are very far away. They bring in the paperwork. The clerk reviews it. If there's an error or it's missing documentation, the clerk has to send the police officer away to get that information. The police officer has to drive to the police department and bring it back. It could stall the process. We also will get paperwork that we have to distribute to other offices, specifically the prosecutors. What this does is it changes that process. It makes it a lot more efficient. The prosecutors will get that information in real time once we accept it. They will get that information electronically, so we don't have to spend time divvying up documents and taking phone calls about when this information is in there. It'll reduce data entry errors. This information is being uploaded into our system. Less times we have to enter data, the less errors that happen. It lessens keystrokes, which means that we will be able to utilize our time more efficiently. And like I just mentioned, the paperwork doesn't have to be driven. If there's a mistake and we reject it, they can update their information electronically. They could submit the right information. So it's good not only for the clerk's office and other stakeholders within the courthouse, but also the police department. And finally, it increases effectiveness and efficiency. I had just mentioned that police departments come in at all hours in the morning, and specifically for arraignments, we need to get these arraignment cases on a docket early. We try to get those started at 10 a.m. If a police department doesn't come in early in the morning, we can't start working on that arraignment docket until we get their paperwork. Now, conceivably, when a clerk comes into work in the morning, they will have that information in the queue and they can get started. And that helps all other agencies in the courthouse, from family services to bail to the public defender. They need to interview these clients before these arraignments start. So now they can conceivably start significantly earlier, and the arraignments can be heard at an earlier time. So it's much more efficient for the court. So we're very excited about this project. Like I said, there's been a significant amount of work put in by the CIS team, Diana's team, Karen from the criminal side. And in addition to this, just quickly, I am really excited not only for this project, which is really going to change the way we do business, but also being able to utilize CIS and work with CIS as an information hub, distributing information. I know, for example, erasure has been a big topic in legislative sessions the last few years. Being able to potentially utilize CIS to when Superior Court Operations is tasked with identifying a statute that is erased, to be able to use CIS as a hub to distribute to all downstream agencies would be an immense help. So we're really looking forward to this project, but also working collaboratively with CIS in the future. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ralph. And just to kind of piggyback off that, so when we were looking for a PD to pilot within GA9, I just want to give a brief shout out to Chief DeMayo from the Clinton PD. We didn't have to ask him twice about being the PD that was going to pilot this. Roughly 2.5 hours a day is taken up by his officers driving all the way from Clinton down to up to Middletown to drop off that paperwork and going through it with the clerks to make sure everything is accurate. So he's looking forward to saving that 2.5 hours per day for the officer to drive that information up into court. So our next partner agency I'd like to bring on is DCJ. We've done a lot of work with DCJ. We worked very closely with them with populating their new e-prosecutor system with 10 years worth of data. That's 10 years worth of cases. It took us about 2 months to complete that activity, but now e-prosecutor is not only has the 10 years worth of data in their system, but also they're getting a nightly feed from judicial for case update information. So anything that changes in the court the previous day is currently sent to DCJ on a nightly basis to keep their systems current. And I'd also, before I turn it over to Rich, I'd just like to thank Rich and Evelyn Godbout, John Mazzato, and Mike Gaylor, who have been our very close partners in making sure that this works for DCJ. We were giving them what they need, and they've been very open and honest with us to tell us, changes we've had to make sure that this system, once we implement it, is going to serve all of their needs going forward. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Rich Glanzo.
Thanks, Chris. I've got to say, just before I start, I'm really upset that your group doesn't have a PLEP. You need to work on this, all right? So, I mean, before I start, I want to thank Evelyn Godbout and her staff. I mean, they've moved heaven and earth for us here at DCJ. As you all know, the Police Accountability Bill a couple of years ago required prosecutor transparency bill, basically, that requires us to share data about the criminal justice system and what we're doing in the court system. So SIS is helping us do that. I mean, our e-prosecutor is, as Chris said, is up and running. I thought Evelyn was going to quit on me when I asked her last September to get everybody trained and get the system up and running to capture data January 1. But SIS got us the data, the 10 years worth of data, and the nightly updates now that we are getting every day. So I'm happy to report that each of our courthouses are using e-prosecutor, entering, uploading documents because we don't have the police reports yet, but entering documents, scanning documents in, adding case notes. So if there is ever another pandemic in the next 100 years, we'll be able to be totally access all of our cases just online via the system. We are working with SIS to test the arrest packet exchanges, because one of the things that Ralph talked about is getting that arrest packet from the police departments. One of the things we're charged with is redacting any information that is going to be used in a probable cause document. So we're testing all those features to make sure that they work. And that's the work that goes on behind the scenes that people don't realize with, Diana at Judicial, Evelyn and my shop, and their staffs, and Chris and his people, to make sure that everything works the way that it's supposed to work, to make sure that all of the data gets into every place that it's supposed to go. So, those are the things I really wanted to highlight. I mean, the system is going to help move us forward. It's exciting for me, in this position, because I could report that we are first now honestly capturing data about what we do. And I don't have to go to Judicial and say, hey, what did we do last year? We have a system to be able to do that. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Rich. So next slide, Tammy. Okay, I was Brian Foley. I'm not sure if you wanted to give this update or not, but we were originally going to have Jason Rosa give the update from DESPI, who's another one of our strong partners, and we're working very closely with on data exchanges. But if it's okay with you, Brian, I can kind of go through the information. I'm pretty knowledgeable about what's going on as far as the SIS DESPI interface.
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. So we're working very closely with the CCH replatform team. over at DESPI. We're currently working with Dane, Alan, Daryl, and Joanne, who are the project members that we're currently working with. One of the big projects that DESPI is working on, there's two major projects. First is the live scan upgrade, which is going to update the live scan machines in each of the PDs around the state. So the great thing about this project, and as it applies to CIS, is live scan is going to take that fingerprint data, send it out to the FBI, and then have it come back to the RMS vendors so that it can be included, and we can verify that the person who's currently being detained is the actual person who we think it is, and sending that information downstream to first through the RMS and then down to CIS, where we will validate all of that data, and then we'll send it to the downstream agencies, mainly Judicial and DCJ. So that's we're working, but like I said, we're working very closely with that. The project timelines for both projects work out pretty closely. So we do believe that when Clinton goes live in the first week of August, that we will also have the live scan machine live in the Clinton PD as well, so that we can make sure that the two systems are talking to each other appropriately and we're sending good data downstream. Right now, they're in their user acceptance testing. CJIS is sending actual case update and disposition data to their new system in the user acceptance environment. So we're looking forward to doing more testing with them. But like I said, they're getting all the data and they need to conduct their testing. And as I said before, they're currently working with the RMS interface from the live scans, so that those live scan machines will be able to communicate with some of the vendors around the state, which we talked about earlier. NextGen, IMC, AccuCom, and Telepartner are some of the vendors we're currently working with. So we want to make sure that the officers, once they enter the information into the RMS, they don't have to re-enter anything once again. So we're working very closely, like I said, with Joanne and Alan on that interface to make sure that it doesn't make the officers' jobs any more difficult than they currently are. So that being said, I'd like to turn over to Sean Boucher, who is a member of the CJIS team, would like to talk about the RMS vendors I talked about briefly, and what we're currently doing with all those RMS vendors, which is going to be critical to our statewide deployment.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can't. For the RMS vendors, that stands for Record Management System. And so in the state of Connecticut, there are many vendors, and originally years ago there was over 30 different vendors in the state. And so a large part of what the CJIS team is doing is working with each one of these vendors that provides the software to the police department. So each police department has selected in a contract to maintain the booking and arrest software that they use that has been mentioned several times. So I'm going to run down, the good news is that through natural consolidation and market forces over the years, we're down to under about 8 or 9 RMS vendors in the state now that we're working with, and that will get us over 98% of all arrests in the state. So it's a much smaller task, but still a very large part of the project. So an update on each one of the main participants that we're working with right now. As we mentioned, NextGen is a local company from here in Connecticut. They have over 50% of the arrests in the state, so they have a lot of volume. They also carry the entire state police contract. So currently they're in production ready mode. So they're in with us and the other stakeholders, Judicial and DCJ, in UAT, sending arrest packages, and we're working through Clinton. Those arrest packages, the documents, and the transmittals are all going through and are being evaluated not just through CIS, which has already been done, but now the other stakeholders are looking at these integrated test cases. So we're very excited to be able to support this production go live scheduled for this summer. One of the other vendors, AccuCom, they're programming level 2, which is there's level 1 and level 2. Level 1 briefly is during the booking process, if there's an early arrest notification that goes out from their system,
that alerts anybody who's looking for that person. So if there's a person that's been detained and somebody from DOC or one of the other agencies or a detective and another police department is looking for that person, they will get an alert immediately that they've been picked up. Level 2 is the full arrest paperwork, which happens as the arrest progresses that you've been hearing about. So right now, AccuCom is done with level 1 and they're working on level 2, the full arrest package paperwork. We have them scheduled to finish by the end of this year so they can participate in the full deployment around the state that Chris was going to be going through. And then the last one briefly, Essential Square. This is one of the companies that's, so AccuCom is another local company here in Connecticut. Essential Square, on the other hand, is an international or a national company, and they have multiple RMSs that they support throughout the country. And in Connecticut, they have 4. And through some acquisitions, some of the other names, like you've heard, are all under the Essential Square umbrella now. We have already begun working with IMC. They're working through level 1, and we'll be working beginning of next year with them through level 2. And then the last part of this is that Central Square does have 3 other record management systems that they sell within the state of Connecticut. And in the next week or 2, we're going to be working with their executive team to kick off our effort with bringing all of those RMSs into a contract to do this integration work with CIS so that their software can talk to our software. And that's it for right now.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So Tammy, can you bring up the next slide, please? Okay, I wanted to briefly go through what the JD to workflow deployment is going to look like before I turn it back over to Sean to talk about data analytics. So this plan is we're going to be rolling out by JD around the state. Our first pass thought that we would go GA by GA, but in conferring with Rich and Ralph, it was determined that we're going to go JD by JD. And we'll have 2 CJS teams deploying this package out to the state, around the state to the different PDs and the different court locations and the different JDs. So one thing I want to kind of point out, if you look at the end date on this, it's 12/8/2023. We do believe that I have a lot of contingency built into this plan just because at this point we don't know what we don't know. So I built a lot of contingency into the front end of this plan. But if we're successful in a rollout to Middlesex and Tolland, I do believe that we're going to be able to expedite this plan. But like I said, a lot of contingency built in through Waterbury. And then once we go through Ansonia and Milford, we should be able to pick up the pace. But if the contingency is not needed, we will definitely be able to expedite this plan and bring it in a lot sooner than we have forecasted here. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. If there aren't any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to talk about data analytics.
Thanks, Chris, very much. This is Mark, just jumping back in. Wanted to allow any members that had a question. That was such a rich topic, and this is the one I was looking forward to the most because you went through from DESPP to DCJ to RMS to judicial branch, how this information technology is being applied. Are there any questions from the members for clarification? I see Chief Kenney has his hand up. Sir, the floor is yours.
Yes, it is. I just got a question regarding the flow of the materials from the police departments into the system. Currently, we utilize a lot of forms that are hard copy paper forms that have to accompany our paperwork up to the court. Will we scanning that at the PD and entering it electronically, or will those forms be provided to the police departments on an electronic format so we don't have to make double rides up to the courthouses?
Okay, I can handle that if you want, Chris, or
certainly.
Okay, so CIS handles electronic PDFs so they can be scanned for now, and that's where most of the RMS vendors start. And as we progress, for example, NextGen, I believe, has more than 90% of the forms already electronic in their systems, so the data is pulled directly from their system and it gets created and sent through CIS without an officer having to print a form and fill it out and then scan it back in. So that's the end goal, is everything will be electronic forms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or come off mute if you'd like. Okay, thank you, Chief. And Chris, thank you very much for your section. It was great content, and I benefit from receiving this multiple times. It takes a few times sometimes to fully sink in just what is being unveiled here and just all the moving parts that you all are managing. I've seen your Gantt charts, and they're enough to make me dizzy. But you find a guided path through those, and that's a credit to your work.
Thank you.
Sean, thank you for letting me butt in for a minute, and the floor is back to you.
Absolutely, thank you. And so in this section, we wanted to talk about as Humayun mentioned, one of the natural outcrops of having the data flow through the system and collected all in one place is that as CJ's team and Assist product gets more exposure, some of the other agencies realize that this could be a source of making their workflows and their lives easier. And give them things that they've always wanted. So some of these projects are on behalf and working with some of the other stakeholders in support of their workflow, their needs for them. And so that's this section that we wanted to highlight in some of the things that we're doing to collect data and provide analysis for the other agencies. I don't want to go through all of these, but there are a couple I wanted to highlight before we get to our guest speaker. The second one down is for DMV. So Judicial in their old system, CRMVS, was hosting DMV folks coming into their system and doing searches. And so now, as they're shutting that system down, they were looking for a replacement solution. And a natural idea came up from Diana Maurice and team over there that, hey, DMV could come into SIS search. And we went through the process of making sure that the DMV folks could see all the data that they needed. It was presented correctly, and that was a suitable solution. And actually, I think it gives DMV a little bit more information to be productive in their workflow. And so that is now we're hosting those folks in SIS search, and they don't, Judicial doesn't have to worry about servicing that group of folks in their new system. So that's complete. Another one, we've been working with Kyle from OPM. So one of the things that we, as Kyle mentioned for his reports, is we provide some of the information for new arrests in a rudimentary way. But during COVID, we found that the biases, we knew there were some biases in the data about transfers from court to court and things like that. But under COVID, we found the data showed that those biases were present, not only present, but became very major portions of the data influences as the courts were shutting down. And so the data wasn't really giving him what he needed. So I'm happy to say that we had a very good multi-agency effort where we all got together and looked for a replacement logic that was more robust and something that could be done on a monthly basis in a reliable way. And so that is there in the middle, and we're looking forward to taking that Lou logic and putting it into the official reports in production in CISS and having Kyle and his team come in, and him and his team will get the entire amount of information in the full docket reports and other reports that are available to his team that were specified but not online yet. So that's coming along really well. And then the last one is fifth from the bottom. That one is the police use of force and transparency. And so that one, we have a guest speaker. I want to show you very briefly what that looks like. Next slide, please. Okay, so I thought it would be useful to start out with what they currently have and where we're headed. On the left, we have a typical PDF form. It's meant to be typed into and then printed out. So those are not variables, it's just places to type like you have a typewriter. And then what the police department does is they print them out and they put them in the mail and they send them over to CCSU and Ken Barone and his team. So what his project on behalf of OPM, he's leading, he's at CCSU, he's the project manager for the project. And what we are working on is a new electronic form. You can see it on the right-hand side. And it is fully programmed. So each one of those elements is a variable, and the police officer can go through this electronically. And at the very end, they can click the submit button after their first and second approvals, And these forms will come back to us electronically. There's several ways, but we're starting off with email. So the form comes back and the data automatically gets extracted into the database for them. So that's where we're headed. Now, before I go to the next slide, it's important to note, under Ken's leadership, we went with a story narrative of how this form should be set up now. What were the preconditions, the setting around the incident? Why was the officer called? Some of those situational information. And then we get into the narrative. But before we go and see the new narrative, on the left-hand side, you can see that in the name of personnel directly involved, you have a couple of areas, and then the control method utilized. So here you can see the numbers 12, 13, 15, and that's meant to represent the control method from the list below that. And so that doesn't really give you a timeline of this and that and what was the response by the person being arrested, suspect, and it doesn't really lend itself to having that data extracted very well to be able to report on it analytical wise. So under Ken's leadership, next slide, please. We've gone in this direction on the right-hand side, where you can see that the application of force narrative section, Ken did a lot of research. He presented it to me, and we talked through a lot of this stuff. And he looked at what some of the best practices are going on in the other states. And you can see now that we have a timeline where an officer's actions and the subject's reactions, or vice versa. And as you go down, we no longer have a map where you have to pin the tail on the donkey type approach. Now we specifically have front and back and missed, and that whole narrative based on the timeline gets captured. And now that it's fully programmed, this is easily changeable. So under each one of these control categories or response categories, we can change what the list has in it. So it's very modifiable and maintainable by the post organization as we move forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ken. Like I said, I think based on what is Ken's idea here, that it's groundbreaking, and I think it's going to leapfrog Connecticut into being one of the folks or states where we're considered best practice now. Ken, are you on the line?
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and good morning, everybody. So in 2019, Public Act 19-90 required the universal collection of use of force incidents for the first time in the state of Connecticut. Law enforcement are required to report use of force incidents that either cause serious physical injury or may have caused serious physical injury. As you can imagine, law enforcement, there's 100+ agencies in the state of Connecticut. And what we discovered when we took on this initiative is that law enforcement departments collect use of force information very differently across the state. And they use a variety of different forms to do so. And they have a variety of different processes for who fills out what forms and what process those forms go through. And so trying to create a universal data collection system as was required under the Public Act became a bit challenging because of the variety of different ways that use of force is collected across the state. And although there was a model form that the Police Officer Standards and Training Council had created for departments to consider using, they weren't mandated to use that form. And so when we started in 2020 to try and build a data set, we first turned to CJPAC. We've had a lot of success at the university working with CJPAC. They built and housed the state's racial profiling database, which collects over 500,000 traffic stop information each year. And we thought it was only natural that they become the warehouse for use of force information. And we're also very appreciative of the fact that over the course of the last 10+ months, they have been willing to take on the hard task of working with us to redesign the state's model use of force reporting form. And we will be moving, hopefully later this summer or early fall, towards a system where every police agency in the state will use the same form for the purposes of reporting reportable use of force to the state of Connecticut. Just to give you a sense of how the process currently works before this form is deployed, we get police departments send us their use of force reports, usually in a PDF format, in an email or hard copy in the mail, and we have to physically take that information and have interns or students enter that information into a database. It's not the most efficient or time-consuming process, and it took us a very long time. It took us almost 4 months just to get the 2019 data into a data set. We're proud to report, though, that the 2019 data, which is the first year of data collection, that data set has been completed. There were 600, there ended up being, when all was said and done, 628 use of force incidents reported to the state that either did cause or may have caused serious physical injury. Those were reported by 57 police departments. And that data set has just been completed and sent over to OPM for their review. We're in the process of manually compiling the 2020 use of force data. We anticipate that that data set will be ready for OPM review by July 1st. 2021, the vast majority of the current year we're in, will be done through the current or old system of manually entering use of force information. And as this new CJIS form is deployed into the field in the coming months, we will be able to move away from manual data collection and into electronic data collection. And the last thing I'll touch upon is that the old form was very static, meaning police would report what type of force they used in a list, but we had no sense of what order they used the force in or the resistance that required additional force to be used. So we simply knew that, say, an officer had verbal commands, they applied pressure points, they used a hand or fist strike, and then maybe they had to use a taser. What order that occurred in and why force escalated could only really be gathered from the narrative of the report. For the purposes of data collection, reading through narratives can be challenging and time-consuming. And so we've really followed the model that New Jersey's really been leading the country in how they collect use of force information. And so we've largely tried to model our form after what New Jersey has done in recent years, which is to build the narrative directly into the report so that we can pull data out to better understand why force was applied and the reaction or resistance that was applied by the subject to require additional force to be used. And that'll really advance the way in which the data analytics can be done on this. Again, I just want to leave you all with the fact that we would not have been able to accomplish this if it wasn't for the resources that CJIS provided to be able to get us to this point. And so I just want to thank them, and I want people to know that Connecticut is one of only a few states that will be universally reporting use of force information in a public way, and that would only be possible as a result of the work CJIS has done. And so thanks to CJIS, and if people have questions about what we're doing, feel free to reach out, and I'll turn it back to you, Sean.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick summary, you can see on the left-hand side, currently as these forms come back electronically, they stack up and they can be, the data is extracted in these rows and automatically can be exported to the database. And then the next step, phase 3 of the project, will take this form and put it right in the RMS systems that we had talked about. So we'll give this to the vendors, they can incorporate it, and that way when the police officers are filling out this form, just like any of the other arrest paperwork, they click the button, it'll go through SIS and go right into the database. So we'll eliminate the email aspect as the carrier. And so with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, that's the end of this section, and I'll turn it back over to either Humayun or Mark.
Thank you, Sean. That's all of our presentation. Hopefully it was informative, and I welcome any comments, questions, or observations. If there are no questions or comments, I'll pass it back to Mr. Chairman, to you, Mark.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I didn't get a chance to say thanks to Ken Barone for joining. OPM has the pleasure of working with the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy on a whole range of products and projects. And Ken is a incredibly hardworking, diligent, skilled, innovative and creative project manager at the Institute who is a problem solver and dives in to help think through different challenges. And use of force report that he described was one that kind of hit the level of implementation before planning had really gotten sufficiently underway. And it was a scramble, and Ken did more than muddle through it. Ken applied vision and creativity and collaboration to fulfill the goals of that policy. And I think it was a perfect connection with CJIS to find a information technology solution to the challenge. I think all of us were concerned about the impact on local law enforcement of having to submit this information in a manual paper way. It was a heavier lift for them, and the translation into enabling effective analysis was certainly fraught. Ken didn't share, but he's told me that boxes were delivered of forms. And also there was no consistent definition for purposes of the report across all the departments. So one department might think the boxes of papers is the only way to go, whereas another could feel that it's perhaps a narrower definition and therefore less information. But it's taken the work to process the manual paper and graduate into the CJIS-driven solution by developing the electronic auto form that will significantly reduce, we hope, the burden on police departments to populate this information, and then a more effective through line to Ken at the Institute to actually analyze the information and produce meaningful analysis and report, because that's what we really strive for, is not only to accomplish the vision outlined in policy, but to justify the work that's done by departments to provide the information. And Ken's got a very small team. He relies on interns often for this work, and he works incredibly hard to get the job done. And he did dive into the paper to do the best he could with it, but it really was challenging to produce the analysis. So when Sean presented on the slide, what it looks like, you can see a reduction in the burden on law enforcement, an improvement in the ability of Ken to process and produce the analysis. So that is a piece, the analytics is something that I sometimes overlook when I'm thinking about, because I'm guided, I think, by the search, the electronic workflow. But these analytics projects have accumulated, and CJIS has done a tremendous job of finding information technology solutions that do reduce burdens on other points in the criminal justice system by centralizing it. And it's an area of technology that has been incredibly helpful. So we benefited from questions and reactions at various stages of the presentation. Does anyone have kind of general thoughts or more specific questions that they get a chance to ask along the way they may wish to answer now? The floor is open for any comments, reactions, questions they may wish to ask. Okay, well, that's a sign of a really well-prepared and delivered presentation. And I know that many of the CJPAC members are also quite active in the work of CJIS. I remember when I started in January of 2019, I saw the video. So I was trying to learn up and bone up on the work of CJPAC. I pulled open the video soon after I started and saw the director's presentation. And I still remember it from having watched it. And it is, in a relatively short period of time, a massive amount of progress has been attained, because that presentation was theoretical at that point, right? It was still in development, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true, yeah.
And now we're at the rollout. The product is ready. It's in the packages. It's getting it out to the field. So that's a credit to the team of you and Cesara and Chris and Sean and Tammy and others at CJIS, as well as the various agencies that are here today. Great. Well, thank you. Well, that completes the kind of heart of our meeting today, the presentation. I thank the CJIS individuals for joining. I'd like to extend my gratitude also to the guests who came today, who helped to bring added insights and experience into how this information technology can be used. At times, it does feel like Star Trek kind of stuff when I'm hearing it. It feels like the IT of the future, but having Judge Carroll and Ralph and having Ken and Chief Kenney and having Rich and Evelyn and others talk about how it's actually being used, you can see this is playing out where literally the rubber hits the road. I think I'm using literally correctly there. Often I do, should be not, but I say figuratively, rubber meets the road in terms of implementation, but literally in terms of the police department vehicles, cruisers, transporting paper back and forth. That's the rubber that we're trying to hit the road with and make an impact. So I thank you all for your efforts today. And
Mark,
yes, sir.
sorry, Mark, don't forget the environmental impact of all those things. I mean, the amount of paper we are saving, the amount of gas we are saving, and you know, so there's going to be, from putting the system in place, I just do want to remind everybody that we are saving the environment as well.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, because the demands that are placed on our police departments, especially during the pandemic, are acute. And, you know, there are broader impacts with respect, I'm speaking here to personnel, but you're right, environmental times of being out in the car, transporting the paperwork, that's time an officer could be doing a whole variety of other activities and responsibilities and duties for the department. So we want to support criminal justice practitioner ability to focus on the core functions and duties that we look to them to do. And this work is going to have an ability to refocus many obligations that are required to do the manual transfer of the files. So you're always thinking about the ripple effects and the more broad effects from you, and that's really apt.
Thank you.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that pretty much concludes our work today. I thought this was a really great meeting and really enjoyed the chance to introduce Chief Mahoney to the commission, introduce Maurice and members of our team, to have Kyle work through the monthly indicators report. I really appreciate Mike Hines' participation. Having the pretrial insights there was really helpful, because it really is homing in on specific, very rapid developing kind of points in the system that the data are capturing. And then, of course, moving on to the heart of our presentation, the presentation. So in closing, the next meeting will be Thursday, June 24th at 9 a.m. We'll be off for May. I know, though, we'll be in touch during the interim, but I look forward to us being all back together again at the end of June. I hope everyone stays safe and is well, and we'll be in touch before long, but we'll see everyone together back in June. Take good care, everybody.
Thank you.